chances are you know someone, or maybe you are someone who's had to deal with infertility. We've got a registered social worker, Sari Shaicovitch, here, who's going to talk about the challenges of infertility and how we can find some help and some guidance through counseling.
Absolutely.
Right? You've had your own struggles with infertility.
Absolutely. My husband and I were married about 5 years, and we were trying to have children. And we figured out as the process went on that it wasn't as easy as we had always thought. You know, you want to have a child, okay, so we'll have a child.
You spend all your teens and 20s and most of your 30s trying to prevent getting pregnant. And then you find that right person, and now it's not working.
So quite early on, I was diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome, and I had an inverted uterus, which means very difficult to carry to term. And along the way, we figured out I wasn't ovulating. So over time, it was very, very hard to, you know, to carry, to maintain a pregnancy. So we experienced many, many losses before we were able to actually.
Miscarriages, you mean?
Yeah, exactly. I still get emotional.
Well,
that many years later.
And did you finally conceive, or did you have to accept that that would never happen?
No, we finally conceived after many years, and we have 3 beautiful children over the course of 10 years of fertility.
Wow.
Yeah. So it worked out well.
Challenges.
Yeah, it worked out well. We were persevered. You know, something that we were determined to do, whether it was biologically or we were prepared to go elsewhere if need be.
Some women who aren't able to finally conceive have to grieve that loss, don't they?
Absolutely.
The loss of thinking you are going to be pregnant.
Absolutely. I highly recommend in my practice that women who are considering adoption or going through surrogacy or any other third party to be able to grieve the loss of having their own biological child, because it's not the same, and they have to almost get through one stage before they're able.
It's funny, pregnancy was never important to me. I was always fine with adoption. We ultimately adopted. What bugged me was my body wasn't doing what I was asking it to do. That bothered me more than anything, and I had to get over being angry at myself.
Yeah, and it's a lot of time where people actually are so out of control over their own body. I mean, most things we're able to control in our life, and we're able to, you know, if we put our mind to certain things, we're able to get there if we work hard enough. This is something that often is totally out of our control. So it's a very difficult, you know, acceptance for a lot of women to be able to admit that their body's failing them, and what are they going to do about it.
Hard for the partner, too, to watch. They don't know what to do. What sorts of challenges do couples face? Couples
face, especially when they're in the midst of going through the fertility process, or if they're seeking assisted reproductive technologies through fertility clinics, often the focus is on the woman, because the woman is the one taking the drugs and going through all the physical changes. And men are often left out, or the partner, I should say, is often left out of the process.
They're needed for one thing and one thing only.
Exactly, but we often, you know, disregard, or they're often disregarded in terms of what the emotional toll is taking on them. And so we find very later on that it does affect the relationship between the husband and the wife, or between same-sex couples as well, depending on what the scenario is. And we see that in counseling a lot, where the men feel like they have to be strong for their partner, and then they often are struggling themselves, and it's not often given much credit and credence.
That's right.
Yeah.
And they must feel out of control, too.
Yeah.
Out of the loop.
Yeah.
For that 5 minutes in that small little room all by themselves, you know, they must feel so left out.
Yeah.
So relationships, the stress in relationships is tough. What sorts of things do you counsel people on? What services do you offer?
Well, in my practice, I have a private fertility practice where I see men, women, and couples together who are struggling anywhere along their journey of having a family. So I see couples coming in who are just at the beginning and realizing that they have a diagnosis that's preventing them from getting pregnant. Or I see families that are coming in because they've had many miscarriages or stillbirth or some kind of diagnosis. So I work a lot with couples to help them make decisions as to what their next steps would be. I also help them formulate plans so that they're not in this state of limbo indefinitely, because when you want a child, it's like you're willing to do anything, and it gets to a point where you need to say, where are we going to stop? Because you can be in the state of limbo for years and years and years.
Costs go up, and you can spend hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, the financial toll is huge, the emotional toll is huge, and the toll that on the relationship. I mean, I try and counsel couples every step of the way to make sure that they're in sync and aligned, and not so as not to develop any kind of resentment toward their partner at any point in the process.
And sex, which is supposed to be fun and spontaneous and enjoyable, becomes work.
Yeah, it becomes a
business.
business.
All the fun gets sucked out of it.
Yeah.
A business,
yeah, it becomes a business, and intimacy virtually is lost, and a lot of couples only have sex when they're ovulating and no other time, and that becomes part of their process and their routine. And it's after the fact, you look back and you say, what, where were we again, and why were we trying to have these children, and we do love each other, and how do we get that back? So I work with couples to try to get through that together, and also to bring back the reason why they wanted to have kids in the first place together.
So important. Do you have any tips to help couples actually get pregnant? Have you learned some strategies along the way?
Actually get pregnant? Well, in terms of, certainly they need to know their own body, and I would highly advise women, especially if they're not ready to have children right now, to get checked and to make sure that everything's working, so that nothing's a surprise or they're not trying for 2 years before they figure out that something is not working properly. And the same with the men. If there's any problem, just go have a test and go, so when it's time to start,
you can hit the ground running.
Exactly.
That's a really good point. Exactly. Do it while you're not even, when the pressure's not on.
Right. Because once you're wanting it and it's not happening and you're not understanding why, that's when you start to get stressed out more. If you go into it kind of with you're more aware of what's going on with yourself, then you can kind of go to the doctor and say, I've been diagnosed with this, or I'm okay over here, and what are we going to do about it? We want to get pregnant.
Good
so
advice.
To start quickly.
Is it just me, or does infertility seem to be on the rise, or are we just hearing more about it?
I think a little of both. I think it is on the rise. I think there's more awareness about it as well. I think women and men are having families later. Women are working longer and are getting married later and starting to have children in 30s instead of a generation ago where it was in 20s.
Eggs aren't quite as fresh and juicy as now.
No. The egg quality starts to deteriorate after 35, 36. So the chance of getting pregnant after that is still possible, but it's a little bit less than 5 years earlier.
Right.
So
I always say when I jump up and down, you could hear my eggs rattling. It's like a human maraca. Thank you so much for being here today. Shaicovitch.com. You'll get all the details, and if you need any help emotionally, psychologically, physically with your fertility struggles, please contact her right away. When we come back, we're going to make some mussels cooked in a Mediterranean tomato, butter, and handmade bread. Yum! Parkett Kitchen and Bar. All right, mussels, get ready. We're coming.